The vision at Christ Point Church, we're real people, living real lives, serving a real God. Just so good to have you with us. Welcome home. We're going to break that down as the weeks come forward. Hey, TV, radio, TV viewers, radio listeners, Facebook Live, so good to have all you guys with us. YouTube, whoever's linking up, welcome home, welcome on board, welcome to the 9 a.m. service at Christ Point Church. We are Christ Point Church. We're one church, 2 locations, and several media outlets. We want to tell you welcome home. Welcome home. So let me just give you a little bit of advertisement for Man Up. Man Up will start on February 3rd. You can or you don't have to get a book. You can order one on Amazon. If you want to, you don't have to. So, Man Up, we will be just kind of reviewing and discussing conversations from Matt Keller concerning the key to everything. Now, Matt writes a lot of books that would go out to leadership and to businesses. So he references, he pastors a church, and he happens to be connected with us, and we're connected with him. But he also has very good words. So I look forward to going through it with you. 2 o'clock starting February 3rd. We'll be right here. We'll figure out anything from there. So guys, right here. So February 3rd, 2 p.m. So New Year's Revolution. Now I stole this from Sarah. I stole the title sermon, New Year's Revolution from Sarah. But if you notice under the title, beer. If you notice, it's just beer. So it ain't what you think it is. So, hey, let's just start off. So I got everybody's attention. I think I did anyway. We've got everybody's attention. Rhythm. We started off this sermon series with rhythm. We reset our rhythm. Had somebody tell me the other day, said, hey, got to be in rhythm. So we reset our rhythm. We come across this sanctuary and across our families in church, and we just said, hey, we're praying for the one to the right and the one to the left, and we're praying for one another, and we're a team. Rhythm to start the victory. Last week, prayer, fasting, and worship to win the victory. Now, beer. Is that to celebrate the victory? I just wondered about that. But still, not what you think. Not what you think. So let me just kind of lay this out for you. We're trailblazers. At Christ Point Church, we're trailblazers, and that's who we are. Johnny Hood sent me a picture yesterday of a pack of wolves, and they were making a path through the snow, which was deeper than they were. So you have to jump up and pack it down, jump up and pack it down, and here's what we are. Here's what Christ Point Church is. We make paths. We create paths where there is no path. See, in doing that, we've been called to see the faces. If you don't have a bracelet, we want you to get one. And don't be afraid to give it all, take it off and give it to somebody. Romans chapter 1, verse 11, I long to see you. I long to see you. So, hey, I want you to be a part of what Christ Point Church is doing. Take that thing off, give it to them, come back and get you another one. So, hey, we've got plenty. See the faces, see the faces, see the faces. Let me just show you what this looks like. Let me show you what it looks like. Let's go straight into Genesis chapter 16, verse 14. Let's go into Genesis chapter 16, verse 14. Therefore, the well was called Beer Lahai. It's the way it's pronounced. Beer Lahai. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. So, beer in Hebrew is a well or a pit. See, it ain't what we think it is in the world today. In Hebrew, it is a well or a pit. It's a source of water that comes from the ground. That's what it is. So, Beer Lahai is basically a term translated in Hebrew that says, the well of the living one who sees me. The well of the living one who sees me. The ground gushes forth with water from the living one who sees me. So we're going to look at that in just a minute. So I told you it wasn't what you thought it was going to be. See, there's only one thing. I want you to kind of go with me here. There's only one thing in the natural that can turn water into wine. There's only one thing on this earth that turns water into wine, and we're going to get to that, and we're going to come back to it in just a second. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. Right now, we're going to go to Beer Lahai. So I'm going to explain to you what was going on in this scripture. There's a guy who's the father of nations, father of multiple nations, 2 nations. His name is Abraham. In the Bible, it starts out with him in the book of Genesis. Abraham has been told by God that you are going to be the father of countless amounts of people. But he's an old man and he has no children. And he has a barren wife. that's an old woman. So here's the thing. He has a barren wife named Sarah. Sarah has an Egyptian servant named Hagar. So Sarah gives Hagar as her proxy. So what that means is she gives her as her stand-in, her substitute. I can't have children. God has promised us children, and I can't have children, so I'm going to give you my maidservant, and you guys can have children, and at least I'm there. So I'm trying to help the situation. So Hagar flees to the desert. She flees to the desert. On one occasion, another occasion, she's banned to the desert. She's cast out. So she finds herself face down at chapter 16, verse 14, at the well of the Lord who supplies and saves and sees her face. It's known as Bir Laharu. See, she's at the place of a water supply from the God who sees me. See, that kind of just goes right along with where God's got us right now. See the faces. Man, the well of the living one who sees me. The well of the living one. See, Hagar carried a source of water. Now, there's two different occasions. One, she goes into the desert by herself. And she gets out into the desert by herself, and the Lord reveals to her, hey, number one, you're going to have a baby. You're pregnant right now. Number two, get back. Whole different sermon. I'm going to preach this one day too. Go back to your master, Sarah. So I'm going to get to that one of these days. So anyway, you go back home. This is what you're supposed to do. So anyway, the second time, she's actually, God says, let her go. God says, move her out. Whatever Sarah says, move her out. And once she's going to have a baby, the next time she's got a roughly 14-year-old son. Got a young teenage son named Ishmael, and she's got to go. So she gets a loaf of bread and a bag of water, and that's all you get. So Hagar carries her own water source into the desert. Now I want you to go with me here. Our own water sources will always and eventually run out. Her water source ran out. Hagar fell face down, and her water source was depleted, and all the while she's laying face down beside the eternal water supply. Our feeble water sources will eventually run out. So here's the thing. God is the one who provides the water. God is the one that brings forth the source of life, and He's the one that sees us. So it's very important that we realize that God's focus is on you and I. He's not forgotten anybody. He's not, people say, well, God hates me. No, God does not hate you. God loves you. God's forgotten me. No, He hasn't forgotten you. See, in the world today, we just need a water supply. We need a water source, but what in the world can turn water into wine? What on this earth has the ability to turn water into wine, and is simply the grapevine? Now, not the vine, but the grapevine. Because, you can have a vine of ivy growing up your chimney, it ain't producing wine. You can have kudzu vines in the south, and we have a lot of them. They're not producing wine. See, the grapevine is the only thing that can pull moisture from the ground, process it through the vine, and produce grapes from its branches. The only thing. So, very important. Let's jump out of Genesis. Let's jump to John in the New Testament. John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11. Got a little bit of a lengthy story here. I just want you to go with me and don't let me lose you. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. So here we've got the mother of Jesus. Also in verse 2, Jesus also was there and was invited to the wedding along with His disciples. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to Him, they have no wine. And He said to His mother, woman, which I would have got smacked right there. It's just the way it is. What does this have to do with me? My hour is not yet come. His mother said to his servants, I love the way mamas work. It don't matter what you say. I'm going to tell servants, y'all do whatever he says. Whatever he says. It don't matter what. He says, my time is not yet come. His mom just turns around and says, do whatever he says. So she says, do what he says. Verse 6, now there were 6 stone water pots or water jars there for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding about 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, fill them jars with water. And they filled them up to the brim. That's very important. Not just a little bit, but to the brim. And He said to them, now draw some out and take it to the master of the feast. So they took it. When the master of the feast tasted the water now become wine, he did not know where it had come from, though the servants knew that drew the water. And the master of the feast called the bridegroom. He said to him, "What's up, dude? Everyone serves the good wine, and when people have drunk freely, then the poor wine, but you have kept the wine, the good wine until now." This, the first sign Jesus did at Cana in Galilee, and he manifested His glory, and His disciples believed in Him. Now, this is pretty wrapped up here, but we're going to bring it on home as fast as we can. Jesus is invited. His mother is invited. His disciples are invited. Some application scholars will say this could very well have been family if they were all invited. So anyway, they're invited to a wedding, and the wine runs out. Man, the wine runs out. The party goes longer than the wine does. So the wine runs out. Now, at worst, I just want you to get a picture of this. At worst, it's an embarrassment to the family. At worst. I mean, I even heard it said that at the worst case scenario, the family could have actually filed a lawsuit. But more than likely, the worst case scenario is that it was an embarrassment to the family. There's nobody's life at stake. There's nothing like that. But verse 11, Jesus tells us that Jesus kicks off His miracle and His first miracle and His ministry by changing water into wine. He does this. I mean, why start out like this? See, I've always wondered that, and then I started looking at, and I'm like, why start out like this? Why start out like this? Why just something simple? His disciples are there, and they really need something to solidify their commitment. They're there. They're in with Him, but they got to see something. See, in a basketball game, if you want to make a statement, this is what I would do if I was a coach. I'd say, hey, listen, first out of the gate, go to tip the ball. You get the ball, take that mug down there and slam it down. Slam it down and get this place electric right off the bat. Or hit that three-pointer and get this place ignited. So, you know what? If you're going to lead out with something big. Football game, launch that thing. Very first play from scrimmage, throw that touchdown about 40 or 50 yards and let him run it in. Man, make it a big deal. Make it a big deal. See, the big play gets the team fired up, gets the crowds on their feet. See, why not lead out with healing someone that's about to die? Why not lead out with raising somebody from the dead? But that's a good one. Man, you got everybody's attention there. Why not lead out with calming a storm? Hey, I just calm the storm. Pessimiso. That's the Greek word. I just calm the storm. Why not calm the storm? Why lead out with turning water into wine? Something that really is not going to matter. An embarrassment at the greatest. See, because the vine is the only thing that can turn water into wine. And the one who sees you and me is the one who's the source of the water. The one who is the source of the water, the one who sees you and me. So let me break this down. In verse 6, there's 6 water jars. Now, why is there 6 water jars? If you Google these things, they're going to go on rants and conversations about how much these things hold. I'm like, who cares how much they hold? I mean, just conversations about how many gallons or how many pints or whatever. And our version says, that we just read, says they held 20 to 30 gallons each. Well, they were large pots. Once again, all we need to see the faces and to reach the faces is a source of water. That's all we're going to need is a source of water. See, in verse 6, these were pots, if you notice when we read it, for ceremonial cleansing or Jewish rites of purification was what the version we read said. Jewish rites of purification. So, the primary mode of transportation in Old Testament and New Testament days was afoot. It didn't matter. There was no stopping for gas. There was no fueling up anything. There was no I'll contact you by phone. It was, if you want to talk to somebody, you get on your feet and you walk to where they are. So the foot was the primary transportation mode. You walked in leather sandals that got nasty. and your feet got dirty and they smelled bad and they were covered with dirt and horse poop and everything else that you could think of. It was the job of the lowest servant in the house to customarily cleanse or wash the feet or take care of somebody as they walked in. Like you and I today, we go to someone's house, we take our shoes off. If you know, or you know, it's just if our feet are dirty, we take our shoes off rather than track dirt or mud into their house. We had a service business for years, and we even had some of those little booties you could put on and walk in if you needed to. So here's the thing: it was a common courtesy, and it was a ritual to clean. So I want you to, this different story altogether, different sermon, but when the lowest servant in the house takes the job of cleaning people's feet, I want you to remember Jesus took that place in that supper the night he was taken to trial. So I want you to remember who took the lowest place. So see, that wash water was what people washed themselves in. A large number. Why 6 pots? Now, this is what I think. There's no scriptural basis for this, but I think this is why there were 6 pots. Because there was a big wedding party going to be there. There was a bunch of people going to be there. So why 6 of them? Because when they come in, they're going to wash their face. They're going to wash their hands. They're going to wash the dirt off of them. They're going to wash and clean themselves. People would have to wash and clean themselves prior to entering. Plenty of water pots, and they would be full of everyone's filth. They would be full of dirt from the streets. They would be full of nastiness from the journey. And they would be full of sweat from the heat. Okay, let me just back up here and make sure that we know what we're talking about. Who are you in your life right now? What's your past look like? What's your past look like that would disqualify you from anything, from even knowing the Lord? Everyone's filth, dirt from the streets, nastiness from the journey, sweat from the heat. Man alive. Now it starts to come home a little bit. People's hands have been in this water. People had blisters. And the blisters from the sun and the heat and cracking their skin open. And they washed their hands in these pots. People who had open sores. And I'm going to tell y'all, there's most of the people in the world today couldn't live in these times. Because there was no Germ-X back then. So you couldn't clean anything up. So Jesus says, fill them to the top, not just a little bit. I don't want to be able to look over in and see where the water is. I want to be able to stand from the side and watch it flow over. So it's very important. Fill them to the brim with any water that you can find. Toe jam water, dirty fingernail water, sores, open wound water. It don't matter. Pour that stuff in there. It's not like they had a tap in those days. They didn't have faucets. They couldn't go. They just had to scoop it up from something. They had to get it, whatever you've got, fill it up. Fill them things up. Now, scoop some out. One of these days I'm going to get to heaven and I'm going to say, show me a version, if you can, on HD screen of that dude. I want to see that guy's face. Now, take some and scoop it out. You want me to scoop that out? What do you want me to do with it? I want you to take some, scoop it out, and take it to the main guy. Take it to the governor of the feast. Take it to the master of the ceremonies. I want you to take it to him. And I can see the guy going, you want me to take this stuff? This stuff got skin floating in it. This stuff, you want me to take this stuff and you want me to present it to him and you want him to drink it? Yeah, we all going to jail. We were just embarrassed before. Now, hey, y'all get your clothes, sign it. We're going to jail. Every one of us going to jail. And he's holding it out like this. He's like, hey, looking at it. You mean you want me to dip off the top of that nasty looking stuff and take it to the master of the ceremonies? The governor of the feast takes it to him, and you know what the guy says? Man, alive, where you been hiding this stuff? This is the best I've ever tasted in my life. This stuff is good. Now we're going to kind of go somewhere real quick. Now the vine is the only thing that can turn water into wine. So let's look at John chapter 15, verse 1. John chapter 15, verse 1. Jesus says, I am the true vine, and my Father's the gardener or the vine dresser. I'm the true vine. See, the vine is the only thing that can take dirty water from the ground and produce sweet wine. He's the only thing. Now, let's stop thinking about the physical. Let's start thinking about the spiritual. My Jesus, the true vine, is the only one that can take dirty water from the ground. Because you say, well, I don't know if that... Pour you some water around a grapevine. Stir your dirt up, pour it, and let it get good and muddy. Ain't nobody dipping out of that and drinking it. But in about 3 months, you're going to pull them grapes off there and eat them like they's candy. Same water pulled right through that vine, purified it, and made grapes out of it. So, Jesus says, I am the true vine. He's the only one that can take dirty water from the ground and produce sweet wine with it. Why kick off your ministry like this? Why kick off your ministry like this? Because the vine is the only thing that can take the dirt from the past and turn it into something beautiful. Let me say that just in case you might be thinking of somebody else. Just in case you might be thinking it might be the person sitting next to you to the right or the left. The vine is the only one that can take the dirt from our past and turn it into something beautiful. The vine is the only one that can take everyone else, what everyone else discards. Stay with me. Take what everyone else discards as used up and washed up and worthless. He takes all of that and he presents it as pure. Not just a little bit pure, but the best I've ever seen and heard of in my life. This is the good stuff. Why didn't you lead out with this? So, why not lead out with something big like raising somebody from the dead? Because God wanted to make sure to tell me, hey, look, it don't matter how messed up your history was. What I do with it from the pot to the master is what makes the difference. That's what makes the difference. The true vine is the only thing that can take everything that you hate about yourself. Everything that you hate about yourself can take everything you're ashamed of. It could take everything that you would use to disqualify yourself, and He uses it to qualify you and I as pure. Present it as pure. Think about that. Let me show you something. I want to break this down as we start landing the plane. John chapter 15. John chapter 15 goes through a description. We read verse 1. I'm the vine and my Father's the gardener. But I want to break down. This has been like a cornerstone passage of Scripture for me for 25 years. I've always went to it. I always loved it. And I want you to look at what it says. Verse 1, I'm the true vine. Jesus says, I'm the true vine. So I'm the one that's able to take the nasty water, the dirty self, the sweat and the open wounds and the pores and all that other stuff, and I'm able to take it through the vine and produce fruit with it. I'm the one that's able to do that. My Father's the gardener. It's very important. Verse 2, the branches that don't produce fruit, they get pruned, they get cut off. Now, he tells us this right out of the gate, but in verse 4 he says the branches must stay connected to the vine. So he gets to the 4th verse, and then he says branches must stay connected to the vine. Verse 5, we are the branches. Jesus says, I'm the vine, my Father's the gardener, we are the branches. We're the branches. So I want you to get this in your mind. Verse 5, branches must stay connected. Well, wait a minute. He just said that in verse 4. Why did he need to say it again in verse 5? He did. Branches must stay connected. Fruit comes from the branches. The vine is the only thing that can turn water into wine. And the branch is connected to the vine. So the only way to produce fruit is to be connected to the vine. So in verse 4, stay connected. Verse 5, stay connected. Verse 6, well, here's something a little odd. Stay connected. Branches must stay connected. But in verse 6, he says it just a little bit different. Stay connected, because if you don't produce, see, when you clip off a branch, you can technically graft that thing back in somewhere else. But in verse 6, says, my Father's the gardener. He's going to cut off what don't produce fruit, and He's going to throw it in the fire to be burned. You don't graft back in ashes. It ain't happening. So it's burn up. So in other words, don't waste what time we have. Don't waste what we've got. You can't resurrect or reconnect ashes back into fruitfulness. So, verse 7. Branches must stay connected. I don't know what he's trying to say here. Branches must stay connected. But this time he's got a promise in there. But you If you do, you can ask whatever you wish. It's my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to be my disciples. But here is not a ticket to say, well, then I want $1 million. I want a new car. I want 6 children. Who in their right mind would pray that? But it's you got to remember, Jesus is talking in the context of the vine, not something else. Concerning fruit, branches must stay connected, because if you see the faces and you envision those faces and you don't give up, then I'm going to give you those faces. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about making a bigger house. He's talking about making disciples. He's talking about making more fruit. Stay connected. Only if you stay connected. Verse 8. We're designed to produce fruit. That's basically what verse 8 says. We're designed to produce fruit. The water filters through the vine through the branches comes the fruit. So we're designed to produce fruit. Verse 9, Jesus says, I love you. Stay connected. I mean, why is it so important that Jesus wants us to stay connected? Don't disconnect. So verse 10, stay connected. Verse 11, stay connected. Stay connected, and I will produce wine through you, that you may be full. Man, think about this. I will produce wine through you if you stay connected, that you may be filled. You may be full. Let's go back to those pots again. Don't just fill them to the edge. Don't just fill them up to where you think they're full. Because let me tell you something. Sometimes we stop that close to being done. Hey guys, you were doing this, and you stopped on us, and you watched us, and I appreciate it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending some time with us. I pray that you enjoyed the service today. Let me take this opportunity to invite you out personally. We're located on the square in Sparta. Our service times are at 9 and 11 every Sunday morning. We'll meet you at the door with a hug. We'll meet you at the door with some coffee ready and some donuts if you want. And let me just take a real quick minute to invite you over to our Smithville campus. For those of you who can't drive over to Sparta, drive over to Smithville, 11 o'clock for now, at 614 Murphy Street in Smithville, Tennessee. So one of our campuses, Christ Point Church, we're real people, we're living real lives, and we're serving a real God. Welcome home.